Hi gamers! Time to check out what my Super Nintendo game collection looks like at the moment. Like I've said in my previous collection update videos, the last time I did these kind of updates were like 6 years ago, so it's high time for me to revisit some of these collections that have grew the most since then, and Super Nintendo is one of those. I got here on the forefront, I got my Super Famicom games, so Japanese Super Nintendo games, and behind them and towering above I got my PAL and US Super Nintendo games. I got a total of 112 games here. It's not the biggest Super Nintendo collection, but I feel like I have most of the essentials here. I got also a few of those big boxed games. Those didn't fit into this opening screen here, but they're coming, don't worry. Games like Earthbound, of course. So, let's get cracking. Let's start out with my Japanese Super Nintendo games, just to get those out of the way. Starting here with a couple of RPGs by Squaresoft. Got here Alcahest, and then Bahamut Lagoon. Lots of RPGs from Squaresoft on the Super Nintendo and in this collection. They were really prolific back in the day and did tons and tons of games for Nintendo. And they were actually pretty cheap these days. They sold well, and you can pick up most of their Japanese games for like $20 or something like that, even like boxed 30 at the max. So whereas English Final Fantasy games, for example, are quite expensive, the Japanese ones are really inexpensive if you just want to, collect and not play the games if you don't know Japanese. Darius Twin, a great side-scrolling shoot 'em up. Final Fight 2. Really like these upright game boxes. Artwork looks really great. Kind of like old VHS tapes. Then we have 2 of the 3 Fire Emblem games, which I'm sorry I don't remember what the Japanese names were. I'm just missing one that I do remember. I'm missing Fire Emblem Truckia 776, but got here the 2 of the earliest games. The 3rd Fire Emblem game that I'm missing was one of the final Super Nintendo games, if not the final game released for the system, that came out in 1996. Hokuto no Ken 6, Fist of the North Star. And then we have some more RPGs from Squaresoft, Front Mission and Front Mission Gun Hazard. And these were something a bit different from Square. These are science fiction, mechs and robots and guns and everything like that, so not something that they usually did, but a nice departure from them. So not just the same fantasy stuff all over again. Fushigi no Dungeon, so a dungeon crawler. Like you can see here from the slime, it's set in the Dragon Quest world, and the style is quite similar as well. Gradius 3. Some of these games were released in in the West as well, but something like shoot 'em ups like this, they're very playable in Japanese, so no reason not to get the quite a bit cheaper version, the Japanese version. Then we have Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, The Great Circus Mystery. So this is the second game in the series. There were a total of 3 on the Super Nintendo. Really love these. Just great, luscious graphics and some nice varied gameplay by Capcom. Then we have the first of the big box games. Here we have Mario and Wario, and this includes the Super Nintendo mouse and mouse pad. And this, like I mentioned in my Mario game collection video that I did for Mario Day, this was the precursor to Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. Kind of like Lemmings. You're guiding Mario, has a bucket over his head, and doesn't see, just wandering forward aimlessly, and you have to click the level so that Mario gets to the goal safely. And then we have Ogre Battle, Episode 5, The March of the Black Queen. Yeah, Ogre Battle were really gorgeous games as well. Tactical RPGs. And here we have Mega Man and Bass, or Rockman and Forte, I think it was called in Japanese. But yeah, you know, rock, bass, and forte. There, all of these are musical terms. You got, I think this bird was called beat, and yeah, if you didn't know that, check out the relation of musical terms and Mega Man characters. You'd be surprised. Then we have a trio of RPGs from Square: Romancing Saga, Romancing Saga 2, and Romancing Saga 3. Space Invaders, the original game. This includes several different game modes of the classic arcade game. And here we have Seiken Densetsu 3, also known as Secret of Mana 2. This was coming out in the West, but then they decided to scrap it and just figure that those Europeans and US people don't want to play this. It's too old. People are moving on to the newer consoles and everything, and yeah, we're just not going to release this outside of Japan, which was a huge mistake, I think. But yeah, it's really nice that they're finally have made the official English translation, and it's now out on Switch and everything, and also the remake is now out. But yeah, it's just a gorgeous, one of the best looking games on the Super Nintendo. Choma Kaimura, also known as Ghouls and Ghosts. I think Ghosts and Goblins was the first game, and Ghouls and Ghosts was the sequel here on the Super Nintendo. Just tough as nails, you know, side-scrolling platform action game by Capcom. Really notorious for its difficulty level. Super Mario Kart. I got this super classic on the Super Famicom here. Perfectly playable in Japanese. And yeah, just a game that not only started its own game series, it started its own genre, you know, karting games, and spawned lots of imitators along the way. Again, which one was it? Was it this was Puyo Puyo? Was it just Puyo Puyo 2? Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, I think do we have here The name of Sega. It doesn't just says compile. But yeah, there were a Puyo Puyo game on the Nintendo 64, and that had copyright of Sega. So a Sega game on a Nintendo system, which was of course unheard of in those days, but nowadays pretty common. Then you have a couple of Tetris games: Super Tetris 2 plus Bombliss, and Super Tetris 3. Like I've said previously many times, if you try to innovate on the Tetris formula, change anything, the game just gets worse. So these aren't aren't better than just plain old Tetris, even though they're trying to think of something crazy to do with the formula, but it just doesn't work. And then we have a second Ogre battle game, Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. Just love these subtitles of Ogre battle games. And one final Japanese Super Famicom game, again from Squaresoft, Treasure Hunter G. I'm missing a few Squaresoft RPGs like Live Alive and games like that, but not many. I have most of them here, and like I said, they were quite inexpensive to pick up. I've got most of these games, not all, but like 90% I bought while I was in Japan, and they're really inexpensive there, and quite easy to find in the box and with the manual and everything. All of these games are complete, of course. So that's it for the Super Famicom games, and let's check out the European and US games. So here, starting from A, we have ActRaiser, and as you can see here, this is made by Enix. Enix did a few more RPGs that came out in Europe, so thanks to Enix, Squaresoft, you know, didn't release in Europe anything except Secret of Mana, but they did something in the US, but Enix did some more in the West, and ActRaiser and its sequel being one of those. Just a really quirky mix of platforming, action, and RPG, and you know, base building, village building, basically a god game, and just a really nice mix of things. We have Aladdin, also by Capcom, like in the Mickey Mouse games. Capcom was on fire, and Disney trusted many of their IPs to them, and they just produced several of the best platforming games on the system. Wait, this isn't in alphabetical order. I messed something up. Kirby's Fun Pack, 8 games in one. A collection of smaller Kirby games, and really nice fun at parties. Some of these mini games here. Then coming back to the alphabetical order, Axelay. Published by Konami but made by Treasure, also known for Ikaruga and Radiant Silvergun, and just a blazingly good shoot 'em up, and just has these side-scrolling levels and vertical scrolling levels with some gorgeous effects that Super Nintendo was capable of, and yeah, just one of the better shoot-'em-ups on the system. Batman Returns, not quite up to par with Batman on the NES, but still a nice big sprites here, decent graphics, some Batmobile action. Then we have Battle Clash. This is one of the Nintendo Scope games. And what I don't have here to show you is the game cartridge from the Nintendo Scope, the Super Scope 6 game that had 6 different mini games basically. So that's part of my collection as well. I got a Super Scope Mint in the box, but yeah, there were like half a dozen games, maybe a bit more, that utilized the light gun, the Super Scope, and this was one of them. Basically like a boss rush game. You're shooting these huge monsters, and they have their big energy bars, and yeah, nice and big, colorful graphics. Bubsy in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Plenty of other platforming games on the Super Nintendo, not just Nintendo and Capcom and Rare doing them. Captain America and the Avengers. This is a bit of a letdown. Sounds really cool, but one of the poorer side-scrolling beat 'em all games, I guess. Then we have Castlevania Vampire's Kiss. I've told this story many times, but of course I have to tell it again. This is my all-time best game find ever. I found this. I saw this at a window of this second-hand store. You know, they're selling books and comics and music CDs and everything, and video games. Usually didn't have anything good, but then I saw a boxed Castlevania Vampire's Kiss, and it was priced at 20 euros. I went in, I said I'll buy that. I didn't even know if it had, you know, the instructions inside, or even if it had a working cartridge or anything. But 20 euros, fine, I'll pay it. Even just for the box, it would be a bargain. But what was inside was everything was perfect. The manual was crisp, and even the game cartridge was in its own plastic baggie. And like nowadays, it's worth like 400 euros or something like that. So yeah, it was a great day. I don't know who missed out here most, the store that sold it for, you know, next to nothing, or the customer that sold it to the store for next to nothing. But yeah, I know I won on this deal. And this has a bit of a bad reputation, and of course I don't think it's, you know, gameplay wise it's not worth the price tag that it commands. But you know, this is the Super Nintendo version of the PC Engine Castlevania Rondo of Blood. But actually, I wouldn't even say that this is a port of the game. They're just so different. Rondo of Blood is one of the best Castlevania games, sure, but this just has, everything has been changed here. The levels, the you know, the enemy placement, it's just a different game. This is more or less like one of those old school Castlevania games, more linear, and has great action, great graphics, and just it's not an inferior version of Rondo of Blood. It's a different game altogether, in my opinion. Chrono Trigger, my favorite Squaresoft RPG. I'm not that big of a fan of Final Fantasy games. They're okay, they're even great, but Chrono Trigger is just fantastic. And really lucky, really happy that this was one of those games that Squaresoft decided to bring over to the US. Not Europe, but just US means that I could play this in English. And just really, really charming cast of characters, especially Frog here. And all the game world, the time travel, you know, plot is just great. Fantastic graphics. Love the music here. Everything is just top notch. If you haven't played Chrono Trigger, you need to play it. Cutthroat Island It's not a good game, but it's based on a movie that's directed by Rennie Harlin, our most successful film director that comes out of Finland. Too bad that the movie was the biggest flop of all time, but you know, I think Rennie was just ahead of the curve here. It was just a couple of years later that, you know, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies came out, and pirates were cool again. But yeah, the movie it's great, great action movie. The game is not that much, but I still had to get it when I saw it. Cybernator, this side-scrolling mech action game by Konami. And here we have one of the biggest classics on the system, Donkey Kong Country. Rare was entrusted with the Donkey Kong IP, and I think people were a bit alarmed that it's gonna be a bad game, but what turned out was one of the best games ever at that point, and certainly the best looking game ever. You know, everybody who saw Donkey Kong Country in motion was like, whoa, Super Nintendo can do this. This is gorgeous. And yeah, it's, I guess, a bit short and a bit easy when it comes to the platforming itself, but well, that was remedied in the sequels. But just amazing graphics, and really sold quite a bit Super Nintendos to people who couldn't believe their eyes. And yeah, this was a system seller. And of course, a system seller warrants sequels. I got here Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, and Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. And this is, I think this is one of my more valuable Super Nintendo games. This is the big boxed version that includes a player's guide inside here. We have Eye of the Beholder. I'm a big fan of Eye of the Beholder games on the computer. I played all of them, and it's a bit difficult to play on the Super Nintendo when you don't have a mouse. Even if you're using the Super Nintendo mouse, it's a bit clunky. But yeah, still a classic game, and that I just wanted to own on the Super Nintendo. And then we have, again, one of the big boxed games, Earthbound, and also includes the player's guide inside. And unlike the Donkey Kong Country 2, which had a normal sized box as well, Earthbound only came in this huge box here. And yeah, must have been quite a sight to see on the shelves of a game store in the early 90s, to have this huge box and just really weird characters here. I don't think this sold very well, at least not in the US, which is why it's pretty rare, and you know, it's like a €500 game these days, maybe more. I haven't checked in a while, but yeah, the crown jewel of any Super Nintendo collection, I think. Then we have some more RPGs from Square in English. Final Fantasy II, also known as Final Fantasy IV in Japan. And this was great, but Squaresoft really hit it off the park with Final Fantasy III, also known as Final Fantasy VI in Japan. This was where everything culminated. Their mastery of Super Nintendo, great Mode 7 graphics and effects, and just really great music, and excellent story, and yeah, this was the big one, and to this day my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. Not quite up to Chrono Trigger, but out of Final Fantasy games, this is my favorite. And we have Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. This was like it says here, an entry-level role-playing adventure. And just some simplified mechanics, and not quite as long and sprawling as Final Fantasy IV and VI were. And this was made for the US market specifically, and they actually ported this over to Japan, also with the name of Final Fantasy USA or something like that. Sorry, I can't remember correctly. But yeah, this was something for people who found the normal Final Fantasy titles too difficult. Final Fight. I got Final Fight 2 in the Super Famicom section. Here is the original, just a classic beat 'em up by Capcom, side-scrolling beat 'em up. Flashback. Some really excellent graphics here with the rotoscoped animation. Kind of reminds me of Prince of Persia, but just in a sci-fi setting, and yeah, really atmospheric levels, sound effects, music, and yeah, I love Flashback. And then we have F-Zero, my favorite racing game on the system. This was one of the games that really sold the Super Nintendo to me. When I looked at Nintendo magazines back in the day, still owning an 8-bit NES, yeah, just looking at the screens of F-Zero was mind-blowing. How good can a game look? And when you saw it in motion, it was your head exploded. The Mode 7 was just perfect, and yeah, spawned a few excellent sequels. The F-Zero X on the Nintendo 64 is actually my favorite in the series, and the F-Zero GX on the GameCube was just excellent. It still looks great to this day. It's just amazing what they did with that. But yeah, this is where it started all, and I can't believe that Nintendo hasn't done more of these. Just give us a new F-Zero, please. Goof Troop, another Disney game by Capcom, and this is one of the best co-op games on the Super Nintendo. One is Goofy and one is Goofy's son or nephew. Which one is it? And yeah, you're going on this island and solving puzzles, adventuring. A really great game. And a nice departure from your standard Disney platforming game. Illusion of Time, one of the few RPGs that came out in Europe as well. This is a kind of like Secret of Mana. It's real-time battles and adventuring. Jungle Book, another Disney game, but not made by Capcom this time. It's not as good as the Capcom games, but still nice and quality platforming. Jurassic Park. I was the biggest Jurassic Park fan when the movie came out. I was just the right age, and I was just really wowed with the movie, as was everybody else. And yeah, this, of course, they made some games out of a blockbuster movie. And what was really cool about this, it had some top-down sections. Most of the game was like this, but it also had these well, people call them Doom-esque sections that are first person, and yeah, that was really really awesome to go into a level that was in first person. Then we have Another World, made by the same people that made Flashback. Actually, I can't remember which one was first. I think Another World was first, and then Flashback came second. Yeah, and just very similar in style, and the really excellent animation and graphics, and quite unique stuff. And then we get to the Kirby section. We had a head start there with the 18-1 Kirby game, but here we have Kirby's Ghost Trap. It's a puzzle game, so not just Kirby wasn't just a star of platforming games, but also puzzle games as well. Then a Simpsons game, Krusty's Super Fun House. Really like this. As a kid, this is basically Simpsons' take on Lemmings. You're trying to kill all the rats that are in Krusty's Super Fun House, and in really inventive ways you have to lead them on and get rid of all of them. Yeah, really good stuff. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. My favorite game on the system. One of my favorite childhood memories of getting this for Christmas. And well, I've talked about so many times about this game, I don't even know what to say about this, except that your Super Nintendo collection isn't complete if you don't have Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And here we have the original game, The Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse. We had the sequel, The Circus Mystery, in the Super Famicom section, and there's also a third game in the series. And then another big boxed game here, Mario Paint, and this also includes the mouse and mouse pad. And this wasn't just about, you know, drawing pictures with the mouse. You could also do animations and compose your own music and kind of make a mini movie. And yeah, this was lots of fun for the whole family. Then we get to the Mega Man games. We have here Mega Man 7, which came out actually later, after the Mega Man X game. And also here Mega Man X2 and Mega Man X3. So I think Mega Man X1 and 2 came out first, and then it was Mega Man 7. And as you can see here from the style, Mega Man X has its own unique style. The Mega Man character itself is all grown up here, whereas when they went back to the didn't have the X in the name, but a number. So this is a sequel to the ones on the NES. The design here is a bit more colorful and childlike, and just to keep it in line with the NES games, whereas Mega Man X was a bit more gritty and a lot cooler in my opinion. And lots of really cool effects here, and yeah, just one of the better looking Super Nintendo games in my opinion. And these aren't cheap anymore. I think you have to pay like $100 for X and X2, and I think like $200 or $300 for X3. So yeah, really happy to have this in complete form, even though this is in quite poor shape, but hey, it's complete. And Mega Man 7 is also not a cheap game anymore. Here is Metal Combat, Falcon's Revenge, and this is a Super Scope game as well, and this is actually a sequel to Battle Clash. Kind of see the same font here and same kind of gameplay. Mickey Mania, lots of Disney games here. And then we can breeze through my sports game collection. I got here NBA Live 97, NHLPA Hockey 93, and then NHL 94, NHL 95, NHL 96, and NHL 97. Now these days I'm not, I don't play sports games at all, but when I was a kid we loved hockey with my friends, and we all had our favorite teams, and yeah, NHL 94 I think was the game that we played the most, and yeah, I have really fond memories of old NHL games. So not just padding my collection here, but yeah, really loved. I think it's just might have been my most played Super Nintendo game. We played it so much with my friends. NHL 94. Here's Pilotwings, another new Nintendo series. Came back on the Nintendo 64 and later on on the 3DS. Well, this is where it all started, and yeah, just really nice to see, you know, a different genre. You know, it's not your platforming, or you know, not your RPG game or not your puzzle game, but something that really different. A flight simulator, of course. PC had the stranglehold on the flight simulator genre, but Nintendo made their own, and Pilotwings is just a gem of a game. You have your different, you have your, let's see here, you have the light plane, rocket belt, skydiving, and hang gliding. So different ways to fly, and different ways to count your points, how well are you performing, and yeah, just really a charming game. Just a nice game to play. That, you know, you're not shooting anybody, you're not killing anybody. You're just flying, performing. You know, thinking about your flight path and where you're going, and just a really nice, charming game. Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure. Rise of the Robots. People were raving about the graphics here, but the gameplay was atrocious. And you know, when you boot the game up these days, even the graphics are quite bad these days, or not hasn't really aged all that well. Like you know, Donkey Kong Country, it still looks great even to this day. Different but great, and but yeah, this is just a mess. RoboCop 3, not a good game, but the movies was just, I don't wanna. It has here more pictures of the movie than the game itself, and the movie was bad. You know, it just destroyed everything that they had been building up with the first two movies, which were awesome. But yeah, I think it just might be the biggest drop in quality that an 80s or 90s action movie had with its sequels. Yeah, RoboCop 1, classic, 2, great, 3, one of the worst movies ever, in my opinion. Secret of Mana. One of the very few games, if not, I think, yeah, the only game that Squaresoft specifically ported over to Europe as well, and but it was a bit too little, too late, because people were already in the habit of importing games from the US. The US had lots more games released than Europe got in the Super Nintendo era. So people had already imported the Secret of Mana from the US. So when this came out in Europe, it didn't sell all that well, and then Squaresoft didn't port anything at all after this. So that was a bit of a shame. But yeah, this is a huge classic, and just a great game in the European collector's library. SimCity, one of the earlier Super Nintendo games, and of course a classic game. Not quite as playable as with the mouse it would have been, but it's still okay. And another Simpsons game, Bart's Nightmare. This is my favorite Simpsons game on the Super Nintendo. Just some really cool different levels. You're playing as Bartzilla here, and Homer is King Kong, and there's puzzle sections, and you're diving in somebody's blood, and this is, Bart is having nightmares, and he's diving into his dreams, and just great variation in the gameplay, and some really nice Simpsons graphics here, and this is actually one of the hidden gems of the Super Nintendo. I really can recommend this. And then we have the bafflingly named Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge. So not Spider-Man and X-Men, it's just Spider-Man X-Men. But kind of like with the Avengers game, it's not as good as the the cover would tell. It is just lots of wasted potential. But hey, it's made by LJN. Starwing, another one of those games that sold Super Nintendos, and like Donkey Kong Country, this was something that people didn't believe that the Super Nintendo would be capable of, and it kind of wasn't, because the game cartridge itself has an extra Super FX chip, and it brings more options to the Super Nintendo and in the developers. And just was possible to generate polygons with the Super Nintendo, and it's a bit rough to play these days. It's choppy, and there's just so few of those polygons for each enemy, each obstacle. So it's kind of harsh on the eyes, but back then it was just amazing. Street Fighter 2, one of the biggest smash hits of Super Nintendo. Everybody had Street Fighter 2, and I played many matches of this with my friends. And there were a total of 3 Street Fighter games on the Super Nintendo. Here we have Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and there was also a Super Street Fighter 2. I think the Turbo was the best version. Turbo added some, an additional speed to the game, so you could play it faster. So that's the name Turbo, but it's basically the same game as the original here. Stunt Race FX, another one, another game that included the Super FX chip, and this is a polygonal racing game. Super Adventure Island. Now we get to the games that with super in their name, and a nice and not all that common game these days. Nice platforming game by Hudson. Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars. Nintendo tasked Squaresoft of doing a Mario role-playing game, and this is what they came up, and it's a classic for all times. basically started the humorous and snarky writing of Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi games, and the turn-based action, battles with the added innovation of you have to push the button at the right time when you're jumping. For example, when you're jumping on top of a Koopa, you can press A, and then you do extra damage or another attack. So, and it's a nice way of involving the player, not just looking at the battle unfold there when you push your menu options, but yeah, you have to be involved in the battle. And nice isometric view. I love isometric games for some reason. They just look really gorgeous. Super Castlevania 4. I think this was either a launch game or came out really soon after Super Nintendo was launched. And yeah, this was again one of those games that really sold everybody of the power of the Super Nintendo. You know, the jump from NES was just huge when you compare this game's graphics to Castlevania games on the NES. It was just no contest. Super Bomberman. And then we also have wait, not yet. We have Super Mario All-Stars, which included the remastered versions of the NES games, and also included for the first time Super Mario Lost Levels, which was the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2. So that was huge. You know, we got to play a brand new Super Mario game, but we still played through all of these games. The remastering was just fantastic. They really looked like, you know, Super Nintendo games instead of NES games, and it was a really nice compilation. And I think pound for pound, this could just be the best game ever. You know, to have all 4 of these games in one package. Maybe Half-Life Orange Box is a compilation that gives this compilation a run for its money. But of course, everything started here with this Super Mario World, the game that was bundled in with the machine, and everybody got this. And even though I kind of feel like that Super Mario Brothers 3 is the superior game, especially when you think about it was released on the NES. But yeah, this was still, people were really. I don't think there was a single person who got the Super Nintendo and their first game was Super Mario World. It was just an amazing game. Had so many different new things. You got Yoshi, you could fly with the cape, you got the world map, you know, with all of the secret exits. So that was something that was expanded upon from Super Mario Brothers 3. So this was a grander adventure as such, you know. The world map was building itself when you found a secret exit, and yeah, just great replayability here, and yeah, love Super Mario World, love it. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, doesn't have quite as revered of a reputation as the original. Maybe it's because, you know, you're not really playing with Mario, you're playing with Yoshi, and Mario is a crying baby, and it's really getting on your nerves. But yeah, this was just, the graphics were unreal. You have some really great effects, huge sprites here, as you can see here from the bosses, like this, and just a really charming graphical style, and yeah, everything was just brand new, but still familiar at the same time. And yeah, I really love this, but many people can't get over the fact that Mario is a baby here. And yeah, I guess it was weird at first, but yeah, this is still a super classic game. But so is this. Here is my fifth and final big boxed game. Super Metroid also includes a giant player's guide here. And yeah, what can I say about Super Metroid that hasn't already been said? Metroid on the NES was a huge classic, and it started the foundations of what finally became Super Metroid. And Super Metroid is really, everybody started emulating Super Metroid. Castlevania shifted their entire focus to, basically copy Super Metroid's structure. But yeah, in my eyes, Super Metroid is the best Metroidvania game, even better than Symphony of the Night. Just Super Metroid is just so tightly designed. It's the perfect atmosphere of Samus Aran alone on a strange planet. You're scanning things, trying to survive, and just every power-up opens up the gameplay area in a different way, and yeah, just a super classic game, and definitely one of the focal points of any Super Nintendo collection is to have this big boxed version of Super Metroid. I don't think we are even halfway through the games that have the word Super in the name. Here we have Super Off-Road, which it's actually an inferior version of Off-Road compared to the NES version, because that's supported 4-player gameplay, and this is just for 2 players. Super Probotector Alien Rebels, also known as Super Contra in the US. Yeah, for some reason Konami decided that Europe can't handle human protagonists, so they changed the 2 characters here to robots and the name to Probotector on the NES, and yeah, the same is continued here throughout. We got several Probotector games. I think we finally got Contra games here in Europe as well. But yeah, Super Probotector this is just an action masterpiece. Just so many different set pieces. You're riding a motorcycle, or you're hanging onto missiles and shooting at the same time. Some crazy bosses that fill out the entire screen, and yeah, just non-stop action, and I think my favorite action game on the Super Nintendo. Super Punch-Out, a sequel to the NES original, and some really nice colorful graphics and huge sprites. Look at the size of these opponents. Just really nice graphics here. And yeah, this is not a common game, at least here in Europe. I think this is like upwards of 100 euros. Especially I have here the Scandinavian version, which includes Swedish, Finnish and Danish language instructions. Yeah, here in Scandinavia we have our own little collecting circles, and the ones with the instruction manual with your country's language is of course always more desirable. Super R-Type. Alongside F-Zero, Super R-Type was also one of those games that I drooled over when I looked at Nintendo magazines back in the day, when I still didn't have a Super Nintendo. And this and F-Zero was just amazing, The graphics were so lush and detailed, and yeah, love Super R-Type. Super Smash TV. This was originally an arcade game, got a decent port here on the Super Nintendo. Just really nice twin stick shooter, even though there are no sticks on the Super Nintendo gamepad. Great action, lots of shooting, great power-ups, crazy bosses, and I also love these between missions. You have the prize tally, that which one of you, you or your friend, has killed more people and get more toasters. Yeah, and really one of the best co-op games on the Super Nintendo as well. Super Soccer, just Nintendo first-party soccer game. They had to. I think it's nice that Nintendo felt and recognized that, of course, you need to have sports games, so you have to do it yourself. There's also Super Tennis here coming up. Super Sviv, really a nice top-down action game. One of you, you can play this with a friend. One of you is a helicopter, and one of you is an armored jeep. And yeah, nice variation there with the abilities of each vehicle. Great fun. And yeah, here's the Super Tennis. And yeah, to this day it's a very decent 2D tennis game. Then we have a nice trio of games here. Super Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Some really gorgeous graphics and very nice you know, adaptations of the movies. Yeah, they're not that you know, faithful to the plots of the movies, but you have your different locations. You have Tatooine, and you got your speeder there, and you can fly an X-wing here. So lots of variation here. In Empire Strikes Back, you're on Hoth, and yeah, as you can see here, here's a boss battle that wasn't in the movie, but you catch my drift. Lightsaber battles, of course, and here on Return of the Jedi, you got some really cool flying sections, and yeah, as you can see, the graphics are really great. Endor, and really difficult games. These were not easy games to get through, but yeah, really nice and crisp copies. I like how well preserved I found these games. And one more super game, Super Turrican. Turrican, of course, being a classic side-scrolling action game. Lots of shooting. T2, the arcade game. This is another Super Scope game, but it's actually also a Super Nintendo mouse game. So it's like a scrolling arcade shooter. You're just shooting at the you know, Terminators are popping up on the screen, but you can also use a mouse and click on them. So it was a nice thing of LJN to think about. You know, just if you don't have the scope, you can actually play the game in a different way as well. But also you can use your regular controller as well. But yeah, just got some use out of your Super Scope. There wasn't that many games that utilized the scope, sadly. And here we have Terranigma. This is made by Enix, and this is one of the very few games that was released in Europe that wasn't released in the US. So this is a great classic RPG game that was released in Japan and Europe, but not the US. And as such, this is quite rare, and the complete copies like this command prices like 200 euros plus. And yeah, I've been wanting to get a Terranigma for this reason, you know, it being such a unique European game for years and years, maybe even decades. And I finally found this for, you know, I think like 6 months ago. I got this complete, and really happy to finally have this. There are non-English copies in Europe of this game as well, like French copies, and I think German copies as well, and those are different copies. So if you're trying to find a PAL copy of Terranigma, you gotta be really careful that you're not buying a French or a German version, and just try to find the English version. Tetris 2. I got 2 Tetris games on the Super Famicom, so this is just Tetris 2 here. This is a US copy of the game. Tin Star, another Super Scope game. You can also use the Super NES mouse here. This is a more cartoonish shoot 'em up game. Tiny Toon Adventures, The Buster Busts Loose. Wing Commander, kind of like with Eye of the Beholder. This is of course better known as a PC game, but it's I just wanted to own it for the Super Nintendo. It's such a classic game, so here we are. And one final game, and it also is a Super Scope game. This one by Nintendo. Well, Battle Clash and the sequel are also made by Nintendo, and Yoshi's Safari is of course made by Nintendo. And you're riding Yoshi in first-person view, which is pretty unique by itself, as you can see here. So that's pretty cool. And that's the face that Yoshi is making if you shoot the back of his head. So you can actually, you can't just blindly shoot around. You have to be mindful that you're not shooting Yoshi. But yeah, you got your standard Mario enemies here, and you're shooting them with a huge bazooka over your shoulder. So quite a novel idea. And that was the end of this video, a total of 112 games. Thank you very much if you made it this far, and I hope you enjoy this and my ramblings on different games. I usually go on a tangent here and on some games, and hopefully you weren't too bored. Follow Famicom on Twitter and Instagram, and if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, please be sure to subscribe now and turn on the notifications from the bell icon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.